In the previous two videos and in this one, we've been discussing the form control's level of abstraction. And level 1 is the control referenced by its name. That's the lowest level. Level 2 is a control referenced by its type, such as text box and checkbox and radio button and so on. And level 3 is a control referenced as a generic control, the actual keyword control. The fourth level is the control lumped with a lot of other controls in a collection. And this is possibly a collection of the form or a collection of some other container, such as a group box. And in the second video, we discussed using the has_children property of the control to determine if it is a container, if it has children, and then using a recursive function to recurse into that the child control collection of that container. In this video, we're going to look at going back in a way, recapturing lower levels of abstraction. An example of this would be going from being a control to being a button, or going from being a control to being a checkbox or a radio button or a group box or some lower form of abstraction. And in order to do that, we use two shorthand keywords. The shorthand keyword for determining the type of the control, and the as shorthand keyword for typecasting a control back to that type. And the advantage of doing this is we regain the ability to use the lower levels methods and properties. Well, in order to handle this, we're going to create a new project. Call this CLOA03 for control level of abstraction 3, and click OK, and then make the form bigger because we're going to have a lot of controls again. And I'll just cut and paste these controls from the clipboard. And we can get rid of the group box because we already handled that in the last video. And in order to get rid of the group boxes, we need to first get rid of anything that is contained. So I select it and delete it. And then once it's empty, I can click delete and delete that. And I'll drag this checkbox up here so these two are together. Select this as the primary checkbox and then hold down Control. It's like this is a secondary checkbox, and go over and right align them or left align them so they're nice and even. And select the label and get rid of that. And now I think we're ready. So let's double click on the Change Universe button. Go on the event handler for button click 1. Now let's have the familiar for each loop. That looks at each control on the form, and this time it'll get everything since there's nothing in containers that's separated out from the universe. It's kind of weird I have to type that whole thing in. I get spoiled with the auto fill-in. And then say set the text property, which is common to all controls, equal to Cyborg Magus again. But this time we want to recapture what the control is. So we can make an if statement that says, oh, I left the N out of the for loop here. There we go. We can make an if statement that says if C is, say, checkbox, then we need to create another control that's a checkbox. And call it CBK, say. Or I guess it'd be CKB. Is equal to C as checkbox. And then we can use properties that are unique to that level of abstraction. For instance, I can say CKB.checked equal to true. And it seems like I have an extra thing here. I think I'll put in an extra one. I like to say what this ends so I can keep track of where these things are. You can also highlight them and it shows you what it corresponds to. So this is the for each. And this is the function itself, the event handler. All the nesting seems okay. So if we save this and then compile and run it and click the change universe, everything gets changed to Cyborg Megas, but you notice the two checkboxes also get checked. So we're able to use a property that's only at the lower level of abstraction by checking if it's a checkbox and then recasting it as a checkbox. So we can now use the checked property. And an even more dramatic example of that is we can say if C is button and a phenomena of a button, for instance, is the clicked event, and you can add an event handler with the delicate add really of plus equal. So we can say button btn equals C as button to recast it as a button, and then say btn dot click and use the plus equal to add the event handler. You can add any number of event handlers because event handlers are really delegates, so you can have any number of them in a list associated with the click. Let's say plus equals, and then there's an interesting shortcut. You can hit tab and that not only fills in new event handler btn click, but actually creates the btn click event handler itself. Oh, and we also need to terminate this if statement. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. So this is over too far, but the heck with it. Now I'll just use another shortcut to create the a message box in here. Just use mbox and then click tab. And that gives you a default message box. And say you clicked a cyborg Magus button. Hopefully everything's nested okay. Maybe I'll put a ending thing on this to try and keep track. I will save this and then run it. And if I click the change universe, you notice these are both checked. And if I click one of these buttons, the message box pops up. And that's true of all of the buttons because it's going through in the for each loop and adding that clicked event handler to each of the clicked events. I noticed there's two of them. I remembered what that phenomena was. Oh yes, I think it's adding it to the OK button in the message box too, which is kind of weird. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe. I decided to come back for a quick addendum because I realized what was happening. When I got two message boxes, it wasn't because it was adding an event handler to the OK of the message box. It was because I clicked this button, which added a second event handler to all the buttons after I clicked it. After I'd made that whole discussion about it being a delegate list, and you can add multiple event handlers to it too. And another thing I wanted to say is that instead of saying if C is checkbox, you can say if C dot get type. Let's see what is equal to type of checkbox. But if you want to type all that in instead of just typing in C is checkbox, you're probably not lazy enough to be a good programmer. But I thought I'd mention it in passing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video again, and I'd appreciate it if you subscribe.